Real estate is usually the first time adults see how emotional money really is.
We don't avoid risks, we avoid regret.
Money isn't emotional until it asks who you believe you are.
Welcome back, y'all, to Deals, Dreams, and Drama. Happy Women's History Month.
Yes.
Happy birthday month to Miranda.
Hi day 314.
And if you are tuning in today, be sure that you like and subscribe so that you can be the first to know when we have new episodes out. So in honor of Women's History Month, we're going to focus on finance with a little bit of a sprinkle of talking about women a little bit more when it comes to finance. Just a little fact, it's been a little over 50 years since women had the opportunity to have credit in general in the U.S. And that is crazy.
Buy a house by yourself or have a credit card.
That is
Yeah.
crazy.
Without a man's signature.
Without a man's signature.
Happy Women's History Month.
Happy
Yes.
Women's History Month.
So, ladies, let's talk about money and dive in. First question is, were you taught to earn, save, or play it safe when it comes to money?
I was taught to be an earner, right? To earn money, be more offensive versus defensive, like, right? No real planning or budgeting. Again, I think some of that may have to do with me being a female a little bit, right? Because we were just taught to like earn something, be able to take care of yourself, but not to be the main breadwinner.
For me, I would say earning as well. I think that I was always taught don't spend everything that you make, right? So you definitely, but that's not really a strategy, right? So I wasn't taught any strategies about saving, investing, or anything like that. It was just, you what is it? If you don't work, you don't eat.
That's right.
That's what I was taught.
And I think for me, I was taught a little bit of both, earning and saving. So of course, y'all know I grew up in the house with my grandma, and she always would be like, you need to make sure you keep $1. So I always knew how to save, but not necessarily invest. I just learned investing, as I got older, but definitely being an earner, because it's like, you can't depend on nobody. She taught me that independent,
Right.
so.
Yep. I would say the same for me. My grandmother was a huge influence on that. I mean, there were times where she was director of nursing at 2 nursing homes, just to earn. And her earning was not necessarily to have a little something on the side. It was so that she could live the lifestyle that she wanted. And so for me, that's very much how I still am to this day. I'm learning more about investing and saving. However, that aspect of earn so that you can have what you want is what I live by.
I love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which is a little weird for me when we're talking through this, because when I think about it, my great grandmother was the one that made sure we knew to earn, but she didn't teach us to invest. And I don't know if they just thought about it as investing back then, but she owned a house, she owned land,
Yes.
but we never talked about investing. But maybe we just didn't think of it that way as we were growing up. But that's what she was doing. You know what I mean?
Right.
She always worked. So,
And she had that legacy,
And she
too.
had that legacy to pass on, correct.
And going back to what we were talking about earlier, do you think that has something to do with it? Like, because she couldn't do a lot of the things without having credit, right?
Correct. And I think they just didn't think about it as investing, right? Back then, they wanted to have their own. My great grandmother had passed on, but, she still worked. She still had her kids to provide for. So she had some land that she had. I mean, we grew up in this area called Godstown. And so she had, several pieces of land. So she started out at one place, and then she ended up moving to another house, but she still had those properties. And so when she passed away, of course, like you said, it went to somebody else in the family, her children. But again, I don't know if we talked about it as she was investing and building wealth. It was just something that, she wanted to do, I'm assuming, because she wanted to have her own.
Right. And both of my grandmothers were land and property owners, both kind of by default. Both of my grandfathers had passed away. So it's interesting that I grew up only seeing ownership, right? In other words, I was in homes that they owned. And then my parents owned the home that we lived in. So it's all I've ever seen. And it's funny that I didn't start thinking of owning a home as an investment until I started selling real estate.
Until you started selling real estate. That's right.
That's good.
And I can piggyback on that and say the same thing. Like, my grandmother took pride in her house. So I lived in the house with them, took so much pride in her house, built it from the ground up. And she would always talk about that. And let's not get into land, because my family owns a lot
That's awesome.
of land from where I'm from. I mean, it's not doing anything, but they still own it, right? And
So it is doing something.
But you're
It's
right.
appreciating.
It is appreciating, but I think, like you said, like even with, I didn't really think about it until I got into real estate, and it's like, oh, that's very valuable, right? That is very valuable. So yeah, my family did have ownership and as well, but I just didn't think of it as being an investment until I got into real estate.
And just kind of tying all that together and hearing all the different perspectives, it's also what we consider investing. When you hear investing, a lot of times people just think stocks.
Stocks
Right.
and bonds.
And, you know, stocks and bonds, and they don't necessarily think about home ownership, and they don't think about land, definitely not land. And that's the one thing that like we cannot create more of.
Yeah,
So
right.
it's a great asset to have. So just how do we think about investing in general, and what that really means, and what wealth means, and what savings means? It doesn't always mean cash on hand. It could be assets, and talking about, you know, what is an asset truly.
And I wonder, is that why now when it comes to people who sit on their houses for 20 years, they don't understand the equity? Because they're not thinking about their house as an investment, right? And we are always talking about that. Like, hey, you've been on this house for 20 years. And especially if you've been living in Charlotte in a house for 20 years, you probably got over 100, 150K in equity in that house. Seriously.
Yeah.
And people don't think about that, right? Like, especially when they're saying, well, where am I going to move? I can't afford it. Well, you take some of that equity out and put that on the next house, you're pretty much with the same payments, and or start buying investment properties. And so I think you're right, as a culture as well, like for Black people, we may not be thinking about real estate in that investment environment. We're just like, we want to own a house. And maybe that's also why we hear some people say now, oh, I don't want to own a house, it's a liability, but they're not thinking about the investment side.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
They're not thinking about the
Advantage
equity.
that it gives you.
Yeah.
That's right.
And it's also interesting too that when I was growing up, the only thing that I ever heard about investing was stocks, right? And so, and think about like, I mean, those of us who grew up in the 80s and 90s, because we have a baby who may not remember this, but if y'all remember those, let me see if I remember. But if y'all remember those movies, like from back then about investing, like Boiler Room, and there's another one like Wolf of Wall Street. I think like back then, all of those were about stock investing,
Right.
and that was it. And everything was about how risky that was. So I think that may have colored my perception of investing.
That's right.
Because I never saw movies about investing in real estate, doing flips, and buy and holds. I didn't see that. Now, obviously, it's not as interesting and great as trading on the stockroom floor and all that stuff. But that's really what, for some of us, that's really what shaped. That's really what shaped our.
Well,
It is.
when Wolf of Wall Street came out, I have never seen Boiler Room.
Yeah, girl, that was like the 80s.
But you're correct, Miranda, right? I mean, I think that's also why, I think we'll talk about this maybe later, but I didn't even think about wealth until I got into real estate. And I started in Houston, cash is just easy, right? I think I saw one of my highest listings, my was $950K. That was my first kind of luxury listing. Somebody bought that thing cash. And it really had me thinking like, wait a minute, now what y'all doing in life that I'm not doing, right? And then you start working with other clients that have wealth and kind of just talking and learning that way. But it wasn't until I was in real estate that I ever think about like really building wealth, not just having savings, that traditional 30-year savings, 30-year payoff, 401k plan, something that was really going to grow for me and my family.
Right.
So we talked about kind of just our thoughts. I want to talk a little bit about the emotions. So what emotions show up most when big money decisions are on the table?
I think fear and anxiety, right? Fear of the unknown, like anything that you haven't done, like, okay, and it's money, right? And if it's a big money move, like buying a house, there's a lot of emotions that go into it. I think fear is the first one that shows up sometimes, but there's a lot of emotions that go into buying real estate and making big money moves.
And I would definitely say fear and wanting to just be comfortable, right? Because we all have our lives that we enjoy living. And it's like, well, if I start making these big financial moves, then it's gonna make me uncomfortable.
Change your lifestyle.
It's gonna change my lifestyle. But I also believe scared money don't make no money.
Don't make no money. But we just learned that when. You always felt that way?
I've always really kind of felt that way. I'm not going to say, what you about to say? What you
No,
about
because
to
I
say?
didn't think that until I got into real estate. I mean, you hear it, but I didn't believe it.
No, I will say before I got into real estate, because I'm even thinking back to like the TSP. Like my investment would be, my 401k would be the TSP for government employees and military. And I feel like I wasn't, like, that money can just sit there and don't do anything until you start reinvesting it. And so for me, it was like, well, I'm a little scared because it's moving slowly. But I'm like, hold up. I saw somebody else's account. I was like, I got to figure this out real quick. And I started, it started making money. So yeah, I think about in 2012, for me, that's when it clicked. Yeah. So that was definitely before I got into real estate.
I think there can be some self-doubt when it comes to big money moves. It's not necessarily, it can be very logical. It can be, hey, you do this and then this is going to happen and then this happens. And it's always just a little bit of that self-doubt in the back of your mind. Sharika, I'm very much like you. I've always been a scared money don't make no money. And I would say from a young age. Partially because I like to bet and gamble a little bit. A little bit, And
We're learning new things.
Do tell. Do tell.
So I think stuff like that, like it is the mindset, but I'm just like, I mean, what's the worst that can happen? Now I've also
This is very brandy, though. This is very brandy.
and I think I take calculated risks. Like I'm just not out here like, hey, I'm just throwing $100,000 at something. However, I think that it does come down to what makes the most sense. And I play with money that I can play with.
Right.
Okay, so I'm not
that
playing
makes
with the
sense.
mortgage money. I'm not playing with the car payment money or the bill money. But if I have some money to play with, I will throw it out there and, see what sticks. And as long as you're doing it that way, at least in the beginning, it's fine. But it can still be some self-doubt to even get to that point.
Yeah, and I'm definitely scared money don't make none. And I do think that sometimes it's also about where you are in your life, right? So the risks I take now look a little differently. They look different than the risks I took 10 years ago, 20 years ago, right? But when it comes to what emotions show up when people are making huge decisions, I find with my clients, sometimes it's joy, right? It's not always bad. It's not always fear. Sometimes it's joy, and we have to temper that joy with some reality, right?
That's true.
Girl, I know you love this house, right? Like, I know you love this house. I know you love these countertops and all that stuff. And sometimes we have to bring in a little bit of logic. When emotion is making the decisions, it's time to bring in a little bit of logic just to make sure that you're making a good decision.
Yeah,
That's a very
That's
good
true.
point.
That
I had
is
a
a
client
good point.
recently that, they have here's why we're moving. And one of the main reasons they're moving is because the spouse is going to have knee surgery and all their bedrooms are currently upstairs. And so they want
Very
a
motivating.
house with, at least a bedroom on the first floor. It doesn't have to be the primary bedroom, but a bedroom on the first floor.
Makes sense.
Yeah, we are looking at and falling in love with houses where everything is upstairs. And I'm like, all right, let's bring it back in. The joy is there and the excitement because it's perfect. It's move-in ready. I'm like, but it's not. And they're making more money now. So they feel like, hey, we can step into this house. It's $200,000 or $300,000 more.
The problem
than
is
what
you
we
can't
bought.
step. The problem is the steps, ain't it?
Put it together down there.
Do we have a comedian here?
I'm just saying, you trying to step into the house, you say you can't go up and down the steps. So that's the kind of stuff that happens in real estate. Where we really do have to
pull
rein
people
it in. Like,
And it's amazing that you have to tell somebody that you called me because you couldn't get up the steps, and then you looking at a house that got 3 stories.
That is.
All the bedrooms are still upstairs. What are we fixing here?
Yes.
Oh my
But
goodness.
I think it's joy in
is.
that we're making more money than we were 2 years ago. Where it's this excitement and it's also a little bit of like, hey, I'm trying to spend what I got, and I'm like, hey, y'all, let's rein it in a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's make this make sense.
Yeah, and that's a good point. One thing that we always tell our buyers though is we want people to be financially comfortable. I'm more focused on that than anything else. If you because one thing my great grandma did talk about is about being house poor. And I tell my clients all the time, I do not want you to move into this house and next summer you're calling me because the taxes, the mortgage, the utilities is not allowing you to go to Aruba. Because I'm going to say, remember we had this conversation, right? That's not a conversation for them to have with me. It's a conversation to have with the lenders. And so you got to make those sound financial choices. And that's kind of how we have to pull people in. Because like you said, if it's fear or it's excitement or whatever it is, we just need to know what your goals are so we can make sure we keep you in that lane.
Yes.
And sometimes that's independent of your pre-approval amount.
That's right.
Right. If you're buying with a loan and you're pre-approved, let's just say at $500,000, the average price here in Charlotte. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're going out looking at $500,000 houses. Because to your point, what is it that you actually need?
That's right.
Because it may not cost $500,000.
That's right.
And you may not want to spend $500,000.
$500,000.
Right? Like you can always afford a lot more than you actually want to pay. Right? So that's why it's important for us to make sure they're having those conversations. I tell my clients all the time, if you come to me saying you're looking at a house for $500,000, and then we start looking at houses and you start sending me $550,000, $575,000, I'm sending you back to the lender. Not because you can't afford it, but because I want you to have that educated conversation to understand what that extra $50,000 or $75,000 is going to look like. Because I feel like when people are educated and you communicate with them, they have less buyer remorse later. It's not like if they get to the end and be like, oh my God, why did we? It's less because now you've talked about it, you've thought about it, you've slept on it. And now you know what it looks like.
You feel like
it's
you're
not a
making
guessing game.
decision.
That's
You
right.
know your numbers.
Know your numbers.
So do you all think that because, and I think we all said we were taught to earn, do you think that that plays a role in the advice that you give to your clients when it comes to real estate?
Absolutely. I'll just say that, and I don't want to, I don't think this is a fair housing violation to say this. And if it is, then y'all didn't hear it.
She's not a realtor today.
Right, but
She's
I
a
will say,
comedian.
Shady Sheree. No, I will say that I tell my clients who are not married, and I work with, because, I'm a woman, I work with a lot of women, right? And I work with a lot of single women. And I tell, the thing is, this is not your forever home.
Right.
And if it is, great. But you don't really go into it thinking that it's your forever home. None of them. Because I've had people buy forever homes and then list them 3 years later, right? So it's not your forever home. So we've got to be thinking, even though you love this house and love everything about it, is it a good investment for you? Is it a good investment for you? Because what does it look like in a few years should your familial status change? Is this still the right house, right? And if not, then did we make a good investment so that if you have to turn around and sell it or if you have to turn around and rent it, you're able to get
money.
something out of that investment. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
That's not a fair housing violation, is it?
I don't think so.
I don't think
but
so.
either way, you're not a realtor today. You're a podcaster.
You're a podcaster today. That's right.
Now she went back to that, like she explained it. There's like, is that now?
No, because the video has been cut. But it's not. Then leave it in there. But I do. I because I'm just like, your familial status, your whatever status, your economic status, everything changes.
It does.
Nothing
It
stays the
does.
same.
Yep.
So you have to purchase a home understanding that in the next 3 years, your reality can completely change.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's very true.
And you could be there for extra 3 years.
And
Even
an
if,
extra 3
even if you
years.
thought you was only going to be there 3 years, are you going to be
Yeah.
okay with that if you end up being here 6 to 10?
My first house I bought in 2004, and back then they were telling people, you buy a house and then you live in it for 5 years and then you sell it, or you did the whole thing. Meanwhile, 14 years later, it got sold. so yeah, the whole 5 year later thing, that didn't happen
didn't
because 5
happen.
years later was
Because life
2008.
happens. Yeah,
You
that's right.
stayed. So you stayed in the house
14.
for quite
14
some
years.
Wow, for quite some time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I bought in 2008, so yeah.
Well, you got a great deal.
Not really. I bought like 3 months before the deal.
Oh.
Gotcha.
Fun times.
Fun time.
Yeah, and I usually stay in the house about 2 or 3 years, and I'm like, all right.
Brandy will move.
Yes.
I heard you say that. Like
I feel
you're
like I've known you for 5 years. You've been in 3 houses.
Probably. It sounds about right.
Are you serious?
It sounds about right. Yeah.
She's
I
not
don't get
attached.
attached to it. We don't even decorate like that. I'm like, we might be here in a little
Brandy,
bit.
I think you would have been good in the military, girl.
However, I will say, when I bought my first house, I didn't have any kids or a
Okay.
kid.
That's
So,
changed.
that's that
That's
change,
that
right?
change.
And then, and it was a townhouse and I loved it. When I sold it, my dad was like, don't sell it, just rent it out. And looking back, I should have listened to him. However, I sold it to get the seed money to start my real estate business. So it's kind of like, again, taking risks. I think we talked about at some point that I got into real estate and had not taken the class yet.
Yeah.
Just quit my job. So yeah, I don't mind taking a calculated risk.
Look how I'm looking. Brandon,
What kills you is you must love to move because I hate moving.
Yes.
You know
I sell
what?
real estate and I hate moving.
My last move was the best one because we didn't do anything. I hired somebody to pack, move, put the boxes in the rooms, and do all the things. So that is how I will move from now on. However, I will say now having a son that is getting ready to go into preschool and kindergarten, I do believe once we get
next move is
settled,
the
we're
next
going
one.
to be
For a while.
settled for a while, unless we decide to move out of state. That's the only thing I can see.
So hold on,
picking
this
us
is
up a
not your
little bit.
last move?
The house that I'm currently in, or the next move.
You ain't
The
been
next move
listening.
is gonna be the
You ain't been
last
listening
move.
when we talking about
Girl.
schools. Shit, this girl might move in the next 9 months. We
Correct.
don't know.
Probably
The next three
Next
months.
three. Next three.
See, because it's about school, but I understand that too, right?
Yeah.
Like I grew up and I moved around a lot. I think I've said before I was like a family baby, so I kind of just moved when I wanted to, including making this move to North Carolina. But when I got married, and I started having my own kids, I was like, no, we got to be still, right? I just did not like moving. So we were in our first house again. Was supposed to be there for 5 years and ended up being there for like 12, right? And then made a move to Houston, and then I think when we moved to Houston, I made a couple of moves back to back to back, just trying to get settled. And then we was in that one space for like 6-7 years. And then even came back to Charlotte. I was like, okay, we're going to be here temporarily. Now we on 4.5 years, right? But when I started thinking about moving, I just really hate it. Like I have done it, but I don't like it.
Yeah. I do not like moving. No. It's
You was in
nothing.
the military, you should be a pro at it.
Yeah, and you notice I stayed in DC for 10 years. I just jumped the beltway. We stayed in the same house for 10 years, and all I did was I moved locations. My husband and kid, I just switched jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my move, girl.
Because when I was doing all the moving when I was younger, it was military people telling me how to roll my clothes up and put it in trash bags and just get out the door. So
And now that I'm here, yes, we are coming on. We just hit 7 years here. And I just realized that. I was like, wow, we've been here for 7 years. And I'm getting the itch to move somewhere. But that's what I'm
not with that pool in the background, you ain't.
That's
but
right,
anyway,
'cause
what's
we
the
gotta
next
have our pool
question,
party.
Brandy?
I'm like,
before you
Have a pool party before you go.
What's a common emotional mistake people make when buying or selling a house?
a common emotional mistake.
I can give mine. I think it's less letting emotion drive the decision. Emotion can be involved. However, logic should be involved as well, and play a pretty big role in that decision. And that's buying or selling. We talked about a couple of episodes ago, like, hey, we're talking about a $750 concession here. Emotion and logic. So I think bringing too much emotion to a situation when it comes to buying or selling can be harmful.
Yeah. And I think on both sides, real estate, and I'm going to say this out loud, just shouldn't be emotional.
Yeah.
Right? Like and it is emotional. It is emotional.
I didn't mean to laugh. I was trying to hold
But
myself
it should,
together.
but what I'm saying is it shouldn't be, especially for us.
For us, yes.
Like
we definitely have to keep our emotions in
we
the line.
need to keep our emotions in line.
100%.
100%. We need to take emotions out of it because we are the professional, right? And we
Right.
are supposed to be doing the guiding. I'm still thinking about you laughing.
Because I'm like, we supposed to.
But think about it. Like, what if your doctor was emotional every time that
That's
they came
right.
in? If your
Exactly.
accountant was emotional. Like, there's so many other careers where it's like, no, emotion, especially the professionals,
Yes.
100% you have to remove your emotion.
Correct. And I
do.
think when you do,
I try. Let me put it this way. I try to.
I definitely do when it comes to dealing with the client,
Yes.
right? The client has no idea that I might have had to just cut somebody out on this side of the table, right? I'm never going to make them lose a deal, but I'm also going to work hard for them because our job is really to relieve the stress from them. I tell my clients in the buyer consult, in the listing consultation, I'm here to help take that stress. Let me wear that stress.
Right.
Because it's a stressful process and emotional for them.
Yes.
And I feel like one of the things that people, when we go back to your question, Brandon, I see with buyers is the fear of FOMO. They fall in love with something and I got to get this now.
Yep.
Then they get under contract, and I've had that more with first-time home buyers, where now they want to bust out the deal because they didn't think about it. And then I think on the other end, when it's a seller, it is more emotionally attached.
I was going to say attachment.
Right, they're too much attached to this house.
memories.
Girl, you leaving this house? We can't worry about that no
Yeah.
more. So
Right.
I think it just depends on the client and the circumstances.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, I think it's the biggest mistake, emotional mistake that happens is for a buyer or a seller to think that this is going to be an adversarial transaction. Because what I say in my consultations is it's not us against them.
It's not.
It's us working together. Because at the end of the day, the buyer wants to buy and the seller wants to sell. Right. So we need to be able to work together to make this happen for both of you. Right. But don't go into it thinking it's a fight. Now, let's be clear. I'm not scared of a fight.
I know that's right.
And sometimes you do have to.
I mean, sometimes you do have to advocate
your bar.
aggressively. Right.
You do.
Sometimes, and I tell my clients, I'm going to always advocate for you. And I'm going to advocate aggressively when necessary.
That's
However, I'm not here to fight nobody. And sometimes you have to remind the agent. I'm doing my job, just like you're doing yours.
Yes.
So let's keep your emotions together
Yes.
so that I can keep mine together.
Yes.
Y'all know
Yes.
y'all always talk about me blocking somebody. Y'all know I have blocked agents before.
No, you haven't.
In a transaction?
One agent I blocked.
During the transaction, Brady.
Wait a minute, not only during, before the ink was dry on the paper. We made it through that whole transaction, no problems though, because he was, again, women and men in real estate.
Sometimes.
And he was being a jerk and he was bullying. I don't bully well. So when the ink was dry, I blocked him on my phone. I sent him an email. I copied my broker. He was his own broker. I copied my transaction coordinator. And I said, because of your behavior and how you reacted, or, acted on my phone, you no longer have access. Anything you need from me, you need to either send to me through an email or call me between 9 and 5, because that's when I used to office in the office. And you can call me in the office number. Otherwise, you can hit my transaction coordinator or my broker. Nobody ain't said nothing to me.
Yeah.
Because that's what had to be done to make that a smooth transaction for my seller.
Yep.
And there was still, and again, I feel like when I have issues like that, it's sometimes with men. Like, again, it was like this, this last listing we just had go out, we talking about Women's History Month. He called me, Keisha, what were you thinking with this house and this price? Huh?
Yeah.
I mean, like, so rude, so cocky. So, sometimes you gotta.
But Sharika said, not this time, but maybe, and it could have been a couple of months ago, but you said something about the main thing is protecting your peace. That's what you did.
Yeah, that's what I did.
That's what you did.
Even in real estate.
Protecting your peace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we made through the transaction because there were other people there to take care of it. He dealt with Sarah, my transaction coordinator. They never had a problem. But Sarah has a little bit more patience than me too. So, it worked out.
Yeah.
So what's one money belief that you had to unlearn in the 50 plus years that we've had access to credit?
This girl
Okay, because
right
careful,
here.
the way you
'Cause
started that, it sounded like...
Because I looked at you a certain way, and I had to look to see if Miranda was looking at you the same way. Because
I was like, ain't nobody here 50 though.
Everything is about age. I'm referencing Women's History Month and the fact that we have had access to credit for just over 50 years.
So what did we have
Women in
to?
general. Women in general. None of us have been here for 50 years yet.
What did we have to? What did we personally have to?
What is one money belief you had to unlearn? What's something?
Mine
you
is that you could work your way to wealth, right? And I'm not saying that
Mm-hmm.
my parents taught me that, but I think that what I saw was working until retirement, working until retirement age, right? And so to me, that was always the goal. I went to work for UPS. I was 22, 23, whatever. And I stayed there 18 years. I was supposed to retire from there. That's what I was going to do. And there, I don't know if they've changed it, but it used to be that you retire at 55. I thought that's what you do. You go and you pay into your little 401k. That's your investing, and then you walk away at 55, and then you're good for the rest of your life. And what I realized is, no, you're not, because if you don't have if nothing has been making money for you, if your money hasn't been making money for you, then you will work for the rest of your life, and that's really what it is.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I have unlearned that, because my goal is not to work for the rest of my life. I do want to sit down, like they say online. What's your dream job? I don't dream of working. I don't dream of working. In my dreams, I am on a beach.
Yes.
Indefinitely.
Yes.
So yeah, you cannot work your way to wealth.
That's a very good one.
Yeah. Go ahead, Keisha, because I got to think on that one.
I think the only big change that thoughts I would change is right off is that don't wait too long. Right? Don't talk about it. Be about it. Because we even see that in real estate, right? Somebody who's been waiting 5 years to buy a house. If I'm waiting 5 years to invest, if I'm waiting 5 years to get things paid off, the longer you wait, the more you wish you'd started before. Like, so I think that's the thing, not to wait so long. Just be actionable.
And I think mine is necessary. You don't have to work so hard. Like, I do think we have to work hard, but you can have time in between that. Like, I think I just grew up thinking like you just got to work for what you want. But realistically, and I have worked, but working really hard causes burnout. Like, so you got to make sure that you're balancing yourself when it comes to working. So with that being said, like I'm just learning to protect my peace and working to the pace that works for me.
So for me, I would say it involves money, and it is that money is not the end all be all. As much value as we put behind money, there's so many other things that come before it. Because even if you have all the money in the world, if you're unhealthy, if if you don't have time to be able to be with your family or friends, or if you have not developed relationships and friendships and things like that, like there's so many things that come before money. However, money is always at the forefront. So for me, I think just unlearning the importance of money, if that makes sense.
You know what? And I just read the book, The Art of Spending Money. And that's kind of like what they talked about is like money is behind it all, but it's not everything at the end of the day. Like you can have all the money in the world and still not be happy, right? Yep. Or it's how people look at money. It's how we all view money. Like, do we need to have all the money in the world?
And over on the flip side of that is, I think sometimes people associate money with their happiness. Like, well, I deserve this. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna go out because I've had a hard week, and then you spend all your money, right? So it's just about making sure you make the right choices with that money, right? We can't pop bottles every single weekend, right? I mean, you could be doing something else.
Who's we?
I don't.
You're looking at the week down there, okay? Good. And welcome to the comedy club, Sharika.
No, that's Shady Sharika. She wanted to talk about, she's gonna go back to talk about how I be out during the week. That's what she wanted Thursday night
through Sunday.
But I'm not popping bottles. Anyway, Brandy, what else?
So I wanted to touch on a cycle that you mentioned, which is you had a rough week. So then you go out and spend all the money that you made that week, therefore causing you to have to go back and work
do it again
because you spent everything.
That's right.
So now you got to go back and remake it. So that's just, just that cycle to think about, like what cycles are we putting ourselves in that could be adjusted. I'll say for us, like now I love to go out and eat. We all know I will go out to eat any day, anytime, anywhere. Like I'm good on that. And this year, this first quarter, we've been focused more on the budget and being fiscally responsible with eating out. And we don't have to spend as much as we spend. I'm not going to put the number out there. We don't have to spend as much as we spend eating out. And I've been able to eat at home. I've been cooking like the way I've been like, we got food at home. And I forgot I could really cook. So
That's hard.
I'm having a good time being at home.
Snatched.
She is
Because listen, eating out will put it on.
Look, it will. It will.
Clock that seat.
And I've enjoyed being at home cooking and having more family time, because now we're not having to drive to the restaurant, drive back from the restaurant. Now everybody's tired and groggy and we're just going straight to bed. We're cooking, we're eating, we're on a schedule, and then we get to play games as a family and all those things that, like again, money can't buy. Money can't buy those
Come on
things.
back to them old school traditions.
But that's so wonderful though. And building those memories. Because the thing that, and I know we got to wrap up, but when I got into real estate, my kids were super young. And I look back, and when I was in grind mode, I mean, I'm still grinding, but I do it with a purpose now, right? And it says in the good book, you work while it's day, right? So that's why, like, we get on every morning and we do the work of real estate together, right? And we do that from this time to this time. And I make sure that my day is productive, because it doesn't serve me and it doesn't serve my kids for me to still be texting and going on and on at night, right? So it's important to me that I do you said you don't want to work. I don't want to work hard my whole life. But if I can just if I can work hard for that 1 or 2 hours during the day,
Make it count.
But make it count.
Yes.
So if those 1 or 2 hours can be profitable for me, then that means my entire night gets to be profitable because I get to spend it with Cameron and James.
That's right.
And Brian. Right.
So it's more than the money, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
and again, we all had to reteach ourselves that because again, we thought we had to go to work, we had to be super mom, you have to do this. But like you said, we don't always have to work hard. If you take a few hours out of the day and work hard, then you can enjoy other time, with your family.
And make sure you're doing the right thing with your money and not popping bottles.
So let me say something about that popping bottles thing.
I want to go back. Take it right back.
So the comment about the popping bottles is a real life situation we had with a buyer one time. That they were going out every single weekend and living La Vida Loco. And so when we started the transaction, the lender was like, hey, you got to stop the spending. You got to cut down because you make the money. Well, they didn't listen. And at the end, the underwriter was eating her up, needing receipts, wanting to know this. Because you can't go out and spend $700-800
On
a
Sunday
week,
fun day.
$500-600 on Sunday fun day
Regularly.
when you need that for your mortgage. So they need to see that financial responsibility too.
Yeah.
So that's where the joke of popping bottles every weekend because we do all like to enjoy it. And as women, I mean, we see it all the time on Instagram. I think women have learned to take more time for ourselves and be with our friends and spend that time. And so we do. My little sister, I remember 5 years ago, she's like, you and your friends go to brunch, y'all do this. First of all, you ain't at brunch with us, so you don't know what we're doing, right? But we do, we have that kind of like view of women. That's what we're doing as we're unwinding with our friends. And that's not always the case.
Yeah.
So that's where the joke came from because it was a real life situation to say, ma'am, you can't do that because you already are in like a tight, income and a
Debt
tight
to income.
DTI. And now you want to spend $500-600 a month on that. So about being responsible. I'm not going out popping bottles every week.
What a time. What a time.
So she say,
So as we start to wrap up, what would you tell women making their first major financial decision? And that could be buying a house, it could be investing, it could be saving. What would you tell women making their first
Scared
major?
money don't make no, I'm just kidding. I would tell women, don't wait for the validation of anybody else. If you've done your research and if you have gotten with a professional to advise you on the financial decision that you are going to make, then move forward in confidence, right?
Yep.
Move forward in faith, move forward in confidence, but don't, because you can let me check with this one and let me check with that one. And what did you do when you did it? And baby, if we're talking about buying a house, I love your mama, but she bought a house 30 years ago.
yeah.
So move forward in confidence with relevant information.
Yes.
That's good.
And if you want to have your mom or family members in the process, make sure that you are listening to the professional. Because I think that's one big thing that I see happen is that mom, dad, or whoever bought a house 10, 15 years ago, and the market is not the same today that it was yesterday. So if you want to keep those people in the process, then definitely make sure that you're talking to your professional. And I think that the decision should be based on solely what is feeding your soul and not the soul of everyone around you. Because I've had a lot of, I'm buying a house and then it turns to French. We're buying a house and you ladies know the rest.
Be okay
speaking
building by
French now.
yourself.
Be okay building by yourself.
Right. It may not always be that way, but don't wait until there's, like you said, somebody else to validate you, right? Because again, you don't know. And why not start sooner than later?
And don't
That's
wait
the
on a
advice.
life event
Yeah.
that may not ever happen. I mean, not to doom and
Yeah.
gloom you, but if you're waiting on a life event to buy a home,
And I
just
think
make your decision.
And I think when we're dealing, because I think a lot of us deal with single women in real estate too, right? I will say that I feel like women learn that later in life, right? Now they're late 30s and 40s and they're like, hey, I want my house. I never got it. So when we're saying that, we're saying start earlier. Don't, like you said, don't wait until you're 30, 40 to be like, oh, you know what, that might not happen. Not saying it's not going to happen, but start sooner than later.
And it's okay to start with a starter home.
That's right.
Because
Yeah.
part of it is if you really get into it and start looking at it, sometimes women start later because they're making less than men already.
Yeah.
So the house that a single man can afford is not the same house that a single woman can afford.
Or
So you get into that concept, and it's like, okay, however, if we had started with the 2-story townhouse that was a 2.5 or whatever, now you would have equity to be able to move up to that single
Yeah.
family home that you really want. So it's about building it, starting earlier and starting with the starter. You don't have to start mid-level just because you're 30s, 40s, or because your friends are there.
Because you see
starter or
friends doing it. Because that's
starter or
the thing.
multifamily, because then you're making income, right? Don't be afraid to say, hey, it's just me. Get a townhouse, rent the other side out.
Yep.
There's always options. Call us for them. We'll tell you.
Not call us for them. Call us for them. I love it.
Nationwide, we can help
Always be closing.
I will say for me, as we start to wrap up, the big thing that I think women making their first major financial decision is to have trusted advice.
Yes.
That trusted advice should come from a professional, preferably a licensed professional.
Yes.
But have someone that you can actually go to and get advice from. And again, not necessarily your mom that bought 30 years ago, not even your brother that bought 2 or 3 years ago. Like, have a trusted individual that you can go to and get advice on whatever that move is that you want to make. I think we've all talked about, like, we all have financial advisors. I don't know everything about finances. I don't know everything about taxes. I don't know the ins and outs of all those things. I know real estate. So having and trusting someone that can actually help you in that decision, chef's kiss.
Chef's kiss. I'm accepting birthday gifts all month, so you can definitely send those my way.
And you know how you get in touch with her? You like, subscribe, and follow. And you can DM us, and we will be sure that you can get your gift to Miranda for her birthday.
And me and Brandy accepted them too now.
Yes, we are still accepting late gifts, you know.
Oh my gosh.
I'm sure Sharika will take an early
Closed
gift.
mouths don't get fed. You know.
I'm the summer baby. I got a few months for you.
All by herself. We were back to back to back.
All right, y'all.
Guys.
Okay.
Thank you all for tuning in to Deals, Dreams, and Drama. We hope that you enjoyed this session, and we look forward to talking with you again soon. Again, like, subscribe, follow, and leave us some comments. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you want to hear us talk about. We are here to serve you. Bye, y'all.
Take care.
Bye. All right.